Hi everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti, and this is Tech Down Over. I am joined today by my good friend, Geoff Blanchard, coming to us from the land down under. How you doing, Geoff?
Good, thank you, Rick. Let's hope the internet holds out. We're having problems today. There's too many
some
people
connections. It's all those kangaroos watching porn. I don't know what to do with them. It's a stuff. Not to mention all of our politicians watching porn here. That must be what it is. Anyway, we're also joined by Harold Muliati, who's off screen right now. He'll be on in a moment, and here we go. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks. And we are back, and there's Harold in that center position of accountability.
Yes.
Yep, here I am.
He never knows what we're going to do to him. It's scary. Anyway. Well, this week we had a fun time. Geoff, we actually recorded our second Udemy course, which is the one on streaming broadcasts for internal and external use. A big plane flying overhead here. And so that's going to come out probably next week. We record. It's about a 2-hour, not quite 2 hours, a little bit less than. Mm-hmm. But it really tells you everything you need to get started in broadcasting, because when you first get in, you don't know what to do. What do I do? Now, it's gotten better than when we started about 12 years ago, but you still don't know everything that's out. So we try to make it easy for people to figure out what to buy, what to look at, and hopefully it gives them something to do and have some fun with.
The great thing with it at the moment, though, you can get into it cheaply and see if you like it or if you don't. Whereas when sort of you started in that, you had to really invest a lot of money into be able to stream something, see whether you wanted to. But there's so many platforms now that you can, Facebook and even YouTube, that you can just have a little try of it and then
and we warn people about this.
If you need it.
And there is a warning in the training. Those platforms will censor you a lot, and they will give you strikes a lot. You know, we routinely get warnings from YouTube. You've used proprietary media. No, actually, we used one of your clips. Oh, okay. Or you've used proprietary. No, we used what was it? Artlist. Oh,
yes.
And they
got in trouble for one of the audio blocks ones. Actually,
audio block we got hit on too, and they're constantly threatening you. But there's nothing you have to do yet. We'll kill you later. And you just have to be careful. You say anything that they think is not correct according to their little standards, which they change about every 6 seconds, you get in trouble. So you have to be really careful. These are not friendly platforms. They're there for their own sake. So just keep that in mind. They give you a free service, you pay for it.
And the other thing, aside from platforms, is that bandwidth has gotten a bit more accessible.
Yes.
Getting enough bandwidth, that is, for being able to stream to a reasonable extent.
That's true.
Well, mine at the moment, I've just got it's 23 up and 91 down. So I think 23 is okay for.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Because you need about minimum about 5, I think, isn't it, or 6 for up?
Yep.
For that, so.
Yeah. Though if you're trying to do 1080p or HD higher res, then you need a little bit more. But I think most of what we're doing, we're pretty good. You need about 5 or 6 megabits up for a good. We're doing 1080p, and I think, what do we have? 6 up?
I think so.
Something like that. 6. That's what vMix is putting out there. I think that's about the highest they do, and it works.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Wow. Yep.
You'll need a lot of bandwidth to stream 8K with your EOS R5.
8K,
right?
Yeah.
But it's the sort of thing like people will want to do that, but what's the point? Most people, even and then all you'll get is a streaming thing on somebody's end that will go to 280 because it can't handle anything else, and it'll say all these pixels, and it'll think it's horrible. No, you've got to sit there and wait for the video to download for 3 hours before you can actually watch it if you want to watch the recording. So
that's right.
It's just not going to work. But most people don't notice if you go the 720p. If that's quite acceptable as long as you've got decent, like we said before. Decent sound's the key. People will put up with a little bit fuzzy. It doesn't matter. No. As long as you can see it. But 720, and then that cuts down on the bandwidth you do need. So just give that a try, because most people wouldn't notice between 720 and 1080 in most cases.
Most. We haven't.
Oh,
this audience, man, they're a tough bunch of people. Yeah.
Tough bunch of people that had a breakfast of refried beans.
You like that one?
Okay.
Oh, kitty cat. That was a shot in the arm.
Well, everybody, you can see what Rick's been doing this week. He's been curating sound effects to put on here.
We haven't done these in a long time. It's been a long week. Not all of them work.
No.
Master is here. So we were thinking of talking a little bit about voiceover today. Things that you can do to improve your voice, especially since you're now on Zoom all day long. Everybody's on remote meetings. You won't be able to go back to work until you're near dead. And so, therefore, we thought we'd give you some techniques to make your life maybe a little bit better. So let's start with Harold.
Yes.
See, we have to put him on the spot.
Put him on the spot.
Harold, what advice would you give to somebody about voiceover and presenting?
Well, something that came up this week actually while we were putting together the streaming course is just to make sure to be aware of where your voice is kind of centered, because as we were recording this week, I kept doing this thing where I don't know if I was getting kind of anxious or something, but my voice would keep going up higher and kind of coming out of my sinuses,
We just lost Geoff.
Uh-oh. We've got a bit of a connection problem on Geoff there.
Hi, Geoff.
Hi, Geoff.
That'll make your voice go higher.
And he's back.
Right.
But yeah.
Hey.
I'm back. I was mystified. You just said, Harold said, I kept doing... And then
it just
froze.
stopped.
So I don't know, what did you keep doing, Harold? I mean,
Harold was talking about his head voice versus more of a chest voice, and how he was going up into his chest, actually into his head, which made his voice higher, and definitely gave it an affectation, which he doesn't normally talk with. So go continue on, Harold.
And Rick gave me a tip with this, which I not necessarily great at applying it. I still have I have a bit of trouble with it, which is to slow down when you're talking, and it helps a bit with that, preventing you from making your voice go up high and then kind of getting this, this kind of sound to it.
Yeah, for example, if we come up here and talk, you notice the voice gets a lot higher because I'm talking almost through my nose. But if you bring your voice down to where your mouth is, now it's a little deeper. And if you bring your voice down to where your chest is, now you have even a deeper sound. If you talk really fast, you're going to go higher. No matter what you do, it's going to go higher. If you talk about medium speed, you'll be okay. But if you talk really slow, it's going to make you a lot deeper.
So is it better when people say you're talking out your backside? Is that better? Is that too low?
That's a little different.
That's probably a bit too low.
Yeah, it's funny. We know a gal who's a proctologist, and it's so funny because she's had 2 husbands and they were both assholes. And we keep saying, is there some relationship with the career and what she's attracting? Sorry, I couldn't resist that one, but it's true. Anyway, going back to the high voice or the head voice, most people talk with their head voice. They talk up here. You can hear it kind of a little more nasally. You can hear the voice kind of bouncing off your palate, up here. And it's not the best professional voice, and it tends to make things sound a little either more affected or something's not quite right because you're bringing it up So if you bring your voice down to where your mouth is, now at least you're talking more out of here. You can even hear the reflection on your palate as you speak. But then, of course, if you're trying to do more of a radio sound, or if you're trying to sound a little more serious, then you bring it down to about here on your upper, maybe first ribs, right around the clavicle area. Now, if you bring it over there, it's going to sound a little bit deeper, a little long. The other thing is, if you have your mic here and then you talk a little further away, it's going to lose that power. As you get closer, it's now going to start sounding a lot more powerful, a lot more interesting, more engaging. And that's the radio voice that you can have just by getting closer. And of course, I'm using a dynamic mic, which tends to accentuate that. But yeah, the high voice is something to think about if that's what you go. That happens a lot to women too, who when you say, talk down from your chest, they look at you like, what do you mean? What do you mean my chest? No, not that part of your chest. We're talking about this part, right about here, maybe first, second rib, not all the way down here. You're going to get a different sound there totally. You want it here. So that at least, especially if a woman has a very high voice, microphones don't do that well with high voices. So you want to bring it down a bit so that you're more understandable, less grating, because that happens too. You don't want to be grating on people with the voice. Hello, my voice is a little bit high. And you're going, oh, that was harsh. So it's all about where you place your voice. You can move it to different parts of your body just by thinking about it. You kind of remember where you are and you bring it down. Your breathing is different. You bring it up. You talk a little bit louder, a little faster. The other day I went to the store, and when I went to the store the other day, it was really interesting what I found, but I didn't find what I was looking for because it wasn't there when I looked for it. So that's the kind of thing.
It's always just think about when you think about speed. Just think about, when you were a little kid and your parents, they don't say, now go now sit down. they go very quietly and slowly. So they don't go ramble on. They say they do it nice and clearly and slowly.
Make
I understand that.
Mistake about it. Yeah. and on the other side of that voice is near death. Yeah. That's true. Now, I like when people go to stores or something. I remember when I lived in Argentina, there was this one American guy it was called Che Burger, which is like McDonald's. It looked exactly like McDonald's. I suspect it was, and they just changed the name to make it more regional. But it was so funny because this is back in the late 70s, and here's this American guy from Texas. So he's got this Texan drawl. He's wearing red pants. Red pants. You don't wear red pants in most places. A Hawaiian shirt and a lei, because they had just come from Hawaii and then came down through the Cape up towards Buenos Aires. And I'm looking at the guy right behind him, and I'm thinking, he's got to be a Texan, because he was tall, had that kind of Lyndon Johnson look. I'm a Texan from, and he kept ordering. I'd like a hamburger with ketchup and fries. And the girl's going, what did you say? I'd like a hamburger with fries and he had, by the way, he also had a 10-gallon hat. It was a cowboy. I was just going, oh my God. Buenos Aires is a pretty cosmopolitan city. He was so out of place. So behind him, I thought I'd help. I said, excuse me, you're from the States, aren't you? And he goes, well, how'd you know? Wild guess, I guess. I said, she doesn't understand. He goes, oh, I got it. I'd like a hamburger. And she's still looking at him like, so I ordered for him. And it was so funny because he thought he was being understanding by slowing it down. If someone doesn't understand English, they're not going to understand you fast or slow.
Now, how does the kind of American cowboy personality compare to Argentine gauchos?
Well, you don't see gauchos.
So there aren't.
Yeah,
really...
you have to go to a tourist spot to see a gaucho somewhere in the south, or if you go to an estancia, a ranch, then you'll see them because they're the actors who play gauchos.
So you got to go to the gaucho zoo to see them.
Pretty much. I mean, you just don't see them. You might see them dressed as gauchos if they're making a barbecue in a tourist place.
Oh, okay.
But other than that, they're really in the country areas where they do wrangling, and they do a lot of it's just like Australia. They do lots of cattle herding and cattle upbringing, and they do tons of meat exporting. So yeah, you'll see that where they have the big herds and everything, but you won't see it in the city. That's more touristy. So yeah, people. Yeah, so when you look like an American cowboy, kind of dressed with red and Hawaii, it just looks really out of place. And it kind of the one thing you don't want to do when you travel overseas is dress like a tourist. It's, there are many people who will steal from you if they think you're a tourist. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to stand out. But it was sort of funny. But again, that's slow. You talk slowly, and people think you're more understandable, and you are if they understand your language. If they don't, I don't know.
Well, and also if you talk a bit slower, you can calm down people a little bit, or at least avoid riling them up as much.
That's
in
right.
A lot of cases.
Now let's talk about mic technique. Like you have your mic in front of you, and there's a sweet spot on every mic. That means the place where the mic sounds well on you. Geoff, what's your sweet spot on your mics?
Well, it's probably about this one here. Is probably about a couple of inches away from the microphone there, but it depends on which microphone I'm using. If I'm using the Sennheiser, it's a little bit closer, but then it's a bit more directional, whereas this one's it's a little bit further away, and then it depends on what you are recording on there. Like you said, if you've got a lot of plosives and that, you make sure you're doing it across the mic rather than right in front of it, so you don't get all those sort of sounds. So.
Yeah. And
then, I'll just play it by it, but I try to make sure I'm at the same distance all the time from it to get a consistent sound. But also one of the things I've found makes life a lot easier is if you're doing your voiceovers, do them first thing in the day. Don't do them late at the day. Well, depends on what you want. Sometimes I've done them late in the day because I want a higher sound, not as deep, because your voice gets tired in the end of the day, and it sounds higher even no matter what you do. You can't get it deeper sometimes at the end of the day. If you've had a whole day in the office speaking with people and speaking a lot of the time, your voice gets tired too. It's like everything else. You get tired if you run too much, whereas in the morning you probably can run really good, but late in the day, if you've been doing it all day, it's a bit harder to do.
Yeah, and like what Geoff said, I'll add a little to that it all depends on you, on your voice. Do you wake up and your voice sounds like crap? Like my voice early in the morning is not as good because I'm gravelly. I've got congestion or gunk because we live in a very dry area. Well, you're in a pretty dry area too.
Yeah,
but
mine's always is better in the morning than it is. And because when the job I do is speaking with people all day, and you do notice it. Like on the weekend, I can still do a voiceover in the afternoon or late in the day because you're not speaking to as many people,
right.
But you're speaking hours when you're at work all the time.
Well, also when you're at work, and this happens a lot, we're not hydrating enough. We tend to be talking too much, and by the time you remember to drink something, it's a little late. Then you go, oh, I should have drank more. Now, there are things for that. Like I have a spray right here. It's a voice spray. It's a vocal spray. There's a million of these. And this one's fairly tolerable, and it helps even out the voice a bit, especially towards the afternoon after you've been talking for hours. It just helps you sound a little cleaner. And then the best one, Harold has it where he's sitting.
He's the Vocal Zone?
The Vocal Zone. This is from England. It's a great voice thing. You can buy them on Amazon.
Vocal Zone.
That is, you showing the box?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's got a lot of stuff in it that just kind of...
Does it have stuff like eucalyptus or menthol or...
I don't think it has eucalyptus. Okay, well, I'm looking at the ingredients right now. It's got a myrrh, it's got licorice, yes, menthol, peppermint, and I guess that's about it. But these are things that kind of cool down your throat. They just soothe you a bit. Yeah, if you're a bit gravelly or rough on the voice, then it can.
And it works.
Yeah.
And it does a good job, and it takes about an hour to get it, shrunk down. I mean, to go away. It's a small little capsule, but it's kind of a gelatin kind of capsule. Yeah. It just you just keep it in your mouth, and eventually within an hour it'll go away. But in the meantime, it does give you a pretty clean, good voice. And it also puts a little bit of that mentholatum and eucalyptus up your nose, if you will. So the fumes clear up your nose more, which is good too.
And I was talking a little bit earlier with Rick about how the previous Udemy course we did on audio sounding great. I think we went through almost a whole box of these between me and Rick because it was
yeah, it was really dry when we were recording that too. So we kept just trying to hydrate.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's interesting is, as you're doing the voiceover, is keeping in mind your energy levels, because they will vary. It's not just your voice gets tired, you get tired. So make sure that when you're doing voiceover, choose times when you're more optimally up versus you're about to croak. Like right after lunch, some people get really sleepy. They eat too much. Then that's probably not an optimal time to do, "Hi, everyone. I just had big lunch and I'm tired." Yeah, it's going to make people sound a little slow. And another thing, this is something people never talk about. Use your eyes. Don't just kind of leave your eyes dead. But when you're reading, when you're doing things, use your eyes, because that also will put emphasis on your words. If you're reading script for voiceover, if you're reading a story, narrating a book, use the eyes. For example, I walked into the room and I saw him and I was about to kill him, but instead I paid different attention. I looked up and I realized it's my dad. What's he doing here? Put emphasis on things. If you're reading a scene, if you've ever read or heard romance novels, they're hilarious because it's, "I was thinking of him, and as I thought of him, I became aroused." And the man walks in and he looks at her and says, "You come here." And so you're playing the roles, you're acting a little bit, but use the eyes. Use your emotion. Tense up if you have to. Use your hands, but be careful because you might hit your equipment. But these are all things that will help if you're doing certain kinds of voiceover to give you more life, more realism to what you're doing.
And it's quite amazing how you can change the way you do something when you misread a word. Like I did one just not so long back, and said, "In the corner, talking was two disgusting old men." And then they said, somebody else said it. Then I reread it. No, it was "In the corner was two distinguished old men." But I just read it disgusting.
Whoops.
So it makes the whole sentence. So I thought, distinguished, not disgusting.
Yeah, and then you put in the whole intonation to put in that emotion too, even if it's the wrong one.
Yeah, that is funny. Two disgusting old men. Distinguished old men. Yeah, that's great. and
that's where it helps when reading things out aloud before you do your recording. But I always have a nice. But as I said, your mind fills in the gaps all the time, and until you start reading scripts, you don't realize how much your mind fills in the gaps, so you don't have to do things.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times you just read things and you say, "Why did?" And you can.
If you're reading script, for example, he'll come back in a moment. I think he got cut off. It's calling him back. But if you're reading scripts, make sure that when you read a script, you can read enough ahead so you know what's coming, because otherwise your inflection may be incorrect. The pauses may be incorrect. There may be a lot of commas in a sentence. So those are all things that, like what Geoff was just talking about, that can really get you going crazy, because that really throws off your cadence, your rhythm.
Yeah.
When you got cut off, I just kept your sentence going.
I can't remember what I started with now to finish, because I just thought, I'm frozen now, so I can't.
We were talking about reading ahead, and like when you read ahead, it's good, and it's hard to read ahead if you're not used to it, because you're talking and reading at the same time. That's always a tricky one.
That's what I was.
You've got to build up a buffer.
I think is this: you can read the same script 3 times and record it, and you say the same thing wrong every time, because your brain fills that in, and you say, "I said that every time," and you've got to really read what's said. Don't let your mind do it. Just read every word, because no matter what you think is good, you've got to have it word for word for what the person's hired you to do.
Yep.
You've just got to do everything. You can't make it, even if it sounds okay. Oh, that's okay. But no, it's got to be that one.
Now, in the old days, we used to bring a lot of voice talent in-house, in studio, and we had a whole mess of local people, and they were very good. But it's funny because there was always somebody watching what they were saying, going through the script, and many times that was me. So you're going through the script as they're saying things, and you go, stop. Okay, go back to that line. You just said, oh, got it. And so, or cut. Because what happens is that is common, exactly what you said, Geoff. You may say the same thing 3 times incorrectly, and they'll do it too, even with somebody there, because it fools the brain into thinking, that's exactly, and it's not. But that's why it's when you have that the luxury of having somebody produce you or direct you, then that takes some of the pressure off the voiceover talent, because now they can relax a bit and just pay attention to what they're doing. And if they make a mistake, it's not a big deal. They're caught on it instantly, and those are good things to have.
The brain's a bit addicted to the old content-aware fill at times.
Yeah, that's true.
And also as well, we're spoiled, because even like this, when you're being live, you can't do anything about it. You've said it, it's gone. Who cares?
And you move on.
Like if we were putting this show together for that you broadcast and publish, not live, and you want different. It would take you days. It takes you days to do that, because Geoff said the wrong word. Then let's stop. Oh, we didn't mean to do that.
Right.
But just said, when you are recording, and people's got to understand they've got to accept that if you're doing a 10-minute script, you're not going to get you're not going to be able to read it and get it all through. And like you see, even the top ones, they get it. They might do it, but they always do some mistakes. But don't let it fluster you. Just keep going.
And for example,
say it again. Some people stop and say, "Oh, no, just go." Three distinguished old men. That just keep going, because it keeps the rhythm of it. Don't stop.
Right.
But just keep going. Keep recording. You could
act like nothing. Yes. In the corner, there were 3 disgusting old men. Those distinguished old men in the corner, and just keep going. Yes. and people would just go, and don't ever do this. We went to I got it wrong. I mean, don't, just flow.
No.
Flow. And also, most people won't even know you got it wrong.
And also, one of my big things is when you're recording things, just assume everybody's going to hear everything you're recording, even though you say, I can edit that out. But it doesn't matter. You might give them the wrong bit. You might give them the raw. And that's fine. But if you say, and say something, I just redo it again. Just now, get on with it.
Now, if your audience is all women, you're just hosed. Forget it. You can't. There's nothing you could do right, because the minute you make a mistake, you made a mistake. Oh, I'm sorry. You read it wrong. Okay. So let's start over again. No, you did it wrong. No matter what you do, it's going to be wrong. They're going to find you were breathing. You didn't do that. You didn't do it. You moved. And by then you're flustered. You will never do that again. So just be careful who your audience is. Women are much more fussy about perfection.
But let's face it, a lot of voiceover these days that people were doing, and they're doing these days, is maybe not a big thing, but sometimes at work they just want to narrate your presentation that you're doing, so you don't have to say it every time. You can record it on there, and they're the ones that are quite fun to do, because people sometimes feel a bit self-conscious, but I always think, well, don't worry about recording it. You were going to be there in person, you do talk to people in person there. If you're embarrassed about your voice being recorded, well, just think, you're doing that in person all the time, and people don't laugh at you when you're talking all the time. They don't think, oh, how silly. But that's what you've just got to get over. And that's what, when I first got into it, I thought, hang on, people are listening to me every day normally, and that I do this all the time. What's the difference if I record? Oh, I sound really strange. But everybody sounds strange to themselves until you get used to You've got to listen to your own voice a little bit before you get used to it. It's a bit like looking. 30 years ago, if anybody saw themselves on camera like that, you'd be mortified. I know. But now, if you're not on camera, then people are most mortified if you don't put them on the face. You're not the picture's not up on there. Whereas very few people these days who react like that with the camera and even the voice these days. It's just it just doesn't seem to be that problem anymore.
No, and one thing to do, because we have new tech nowadays, which isn't that new, it's been out for years. In the old days, we used to just read and then listen to ourselves just reading, but that's not good enough. Record yourself. Everything you do, record yourself and play it back until you get it right. The reason is the more you hear yourself, one, you'll get used to your voice, and two, you can catch the mistakes you make. You'll catch the little things you do incorrectly. You can get voice recorders. I know on the last show, Geoff was showing his, I think it's
Tascam, right?
The DR40. Yeah.
DR40 Plus? Was it a Plus or?
No, DR40X, I think the current one
DR40X.
is. Yeah.
Those are great devices for $100-something. You can get cheaper ones too. There's all sorts of recorders. They'll really make a difference to help you, and wherever you are, you can take it with you on the road to help you present better, because it's all about practice. Now, Geoff, do you have any final tips? We're almost out of time.
Well, one of the, as I said, about doing it first thing, but if you're going to do some voiceover, just don't start drinking 3 cups of coffee, because like we said, it dehydrates you and that. Do your voiceover first before you have your coffee.
And don't do booze at all.
Coffee,
no alcohol.
You go downhill from there.
Yeah, forget the alcohol. You'll be totally dehydrated.
Yeah, but I think that's the thing. And always, whenever you're doing a voiceover, jot down the time you record it and the equipment you use. And the reason why people say, why bother? I've done it. Yeah, I can tell you now that the most perfect thing, you've done everything, you've reread, if you've done it right, then somebody will come back to it.
Yeah, for example, when you save a file, it's always a good idea to have the name of the file, underscore, maybe the date, underscore, the mic. So, for example, if you used a Rode, if you know your mics, let's say you put in NTG3 or NT3, just put in NT3, you know it's a Rode. Or if you have a Sennheiser, you can say MKH416. So you always know what mic you used on that recording. Otherwise, believe me, you won't remember. Especially if you have a lot of mics. If you only have one mic, I guess you don't need to. But if you have a lot of mics, like we do, you need to.
And
that's Geoff. Oh, you are back. Good.
I get such a thrill when I re-record something over something, and I can't even tell the difference. I said, where was one recording started? And you think, gee, I've done a good job there, that you can record at the same time with the same mic, and you can replace something in a big sentence, and you think, oh, I can't even tell the difference. Whereas if it is different mic, it will be obvious. And it amazes me how I've heard some on the commercial radio stations, you hear something and you think, I can hear they've done that. It's shocking. But they get away with it sometimes.
Yep. Harold, do you have any tips?
Oh, I was just going to say, and that's a pretty important point that Rick said about being aware of and recording, which microphone and so on you're using. Because, as he said, nowadays to check your voice, to listen to yourself, you record yourself. And that's good because when someone's going to hear you, they're not only hearing your voice, they're hearing your voice through the whole chain of, room, microphone, and it's going into, an audio interface, it's going into a computer with a certain sound card and all that kind of thing. And each setup will sound slightly different with your voice than another.
Yeah, that's another good tip. If you have equipment in 2 places or 3, get the same equipment. Because let's say you're using an Aphex Studio channel in your office. Have one at home too, because if you record at home, it won't sound any different. And especially, I've had people kind of joke with me when they see pictures of my home studio and they go, wait a minute, that looks like your office.
Yeah, he's basically got a replica
It's
of
almost
his
the same. Yeah, to the point even some of the sound dampening fiberglass is about the same. So that way you keep your sound consistent wherever you are.
Yeah.
If you have any questions on voiceover techniques or voiceover, send us a note down in the comment section below, or you can also take the Udemy course.
Peter Baker.
Peter Baker! Jeez, It's late. I'm tired today. Peter Baker does a great job, and he's on Udemy. It's a very good, I think it's called the Master Voice Class, right? Voiceover Masterclass.
We'll link to that below if you're interested.
Yep, please. Yeah, it's a great course. It's $40 or even less. It might be on sale right now for $9.95. take the course. It's a really good one. I know Geoff took it. I've gone through most of it, and it's just a really good course. It's just very good, solid, common sense advice for making your voiceover better. I guess it's time.
No, I
Let's retake the whole show, guys.
Yep, that's it. Re-record.
Anyway, have a good one, everyone. We will see you next week. Maybe with luck, you'll be out of your incarceration. I doubt it, but maybe. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
everyone.
Oh.
Ah.